For the people watching at home right now who may be thinking, hey, heat waves happen all the time. Maybe this one happened a little earlier. What's the one big takeaway from this conversation that you want them to have about California's climate future?
Well, I think a heat wave like this one in March, of course, which is going to bring June or even July-like temperatures to some places. Some folks might say, well, we see temperatures like this every June and every July, so what's such a big deal about this event? Well, first of all, it is occurring in March, and for anybody who's involved in agriculture in the Central Valley, you know that the timing of hitting different temperature thresholds is critically important for different crops, and having June or July-like afternoon temperatures in March is not normal, and that can really disrupt the phenology and the seasonality of a lot of critical aspects of having successful growing season in Central California. The other piece, too, is that California's water supply is greatly predicated on there being this nice, convenient time release storage of snowpack in the mountains, which gradually replenishes the water in our large western Sierra Slope reservoirs from spring into summer. So reservoir levels are doing just fine now. In fact, they're actually higher water levels than average in most places right now, thanks to a reasonably wet winter and a couple of wet years prior to this one. So at least we've got that going for us this year. But this is a classic climate change conundrum, which is that even though reservoir levels are doing decently now, they may not be by later this summer because while the water levels are reasonably high now, we've pretty much gotten what we're going to get. And the replenishment that we'd ordinarily be depending on to constantly resupply that water that we're using, that we're pumping out of the reservoirs, that we're flowing out and using for urban water use for agriculture in the summer months and the fall months, it isn't going to get replenished this year nearly to the same degree that it would be in a year with a much better snowpack. And so this really does affect our water supply even during a non-drought year. We don't have serious drought conditions in California right now, despite a really low snowpack and some record warmth, because we have seen a reasonable amount of precipitation both this winter and in the previous one. But we may still run into some water issues later this year because that snowpack is sort of a preview of a warmer climate future where the precipitation isn't necessarily lacking, but the really warm temperatures and the really low snowpack mean that the historical relationships between water supply and runoff and reservoir levels really no longer apply. We're sort of operating in new territory that makes it more challenging to both predict the water supply dynamics for the year and potentially means that there's going to be less water available than we would expect given how much precipitation has actually fallen.
It is alarming to say the very least.